The Blood Villager is a powerful entity that is shrouded in mystery. Many think he is just a glitch, while others claim he is the culmination of all villagers' rage from their mistreatment at the hands of players. But where did this eerie mob truly come from? Find out as we uncover the true story of Minecraft's Blood Villager. Evening light cascaded down onto a frightening scene as an unlucky village found themselves at the mercy of a pillager raid. Horns echoed as these gray bandits flooded the streets of this once quaint hamlet. With the builders who once might have protected them long gone from Minecraft's world, the villagers could only rely on the powerful iron golems and the occasional good-willed player to defend them. On this day, a single iron golem stood against the horde of pillagers attacking. Arrows flew, adding their whizzing sounds to the cacophony of yells and screams as villagers ran for their lives. The arms of the villagers were crossed, still holding to the vow of non-violence made millennia ago. Amidst the chaos, a single villager was not running, the village nitwit, Connor. Connor didn't know exactly what was going on, but he had always been told the sounds of those horns meant danger. He stood outside his house with his only friend, which he tried urging onward with a lead.
Come on, Porky, we gotta get out of here.
With a half-hearted oink, the pig refused to move, just as an arrow abruptly flew by, hitting Connor. Yelping in surprise, instincts took over, and he started to run away. Porky watched as the pillagers followed hot on his tail. Connor's pursuers were not about to let the wounded target go, so they chased him eagerly as he stumbled into the forest nearby. Connor weaved through the trees in hysteria. Arrows would hit with a thud into the trees as he passed. Closing his eyes, he cried in fear as he ran deeper and deeper into the wood, not even realizing his hunters had let him go. By the time Connor stopped, the sun was setting in the sky. He was ready to return to his home, but he hadn't a clue where he was. Forgetting the prior chase, he wondered how he got so lost in the forest. He started to walk hopelessly through the wood as a thick fog surrounded him. His fatigue from the raid caught up to him, and he fell to the ground. Crawling, he spotted a small pool. Overcome by thirst, he struggled desperately over to it and drank happily, seemingly not realizing that the pool was blood red. Having had his fill, Connor stood up refreshed. Suddenly, an eerie voice whispered in the back of his mind.
Go to sleep.
Connor freaked out, spinning around to face the direction of the skin-crawling sensation. His world began to spin as he collapsed to the ground, his fright and fatigue having combined and overwhelmed the nitwit's senses. The next morning, Connor awoke alone on the forest floor. His head throbbed as he stood up, yet it felt clearer at the same time. The world around him was brighter, and his thoughts were no longer muddled. Before pondering on it for too long, he once again heard the chilling voice, this time whispering his name. Deciding he was just hearing things, he quickly left, embarking on a journey back to the village. As he departed, a large shadow watched from amidst the foggy trees. By the time Connor returned home, it was once again twilight. The damages left by the raid were mostly repaired, and the villagers had returned to do their daily activities. Nobody greeted Connor. That wasn't unusual, he was the village nitwit, but why did he always put up with that behavior, he questioned. As he recalled not only that, but also the strange events of the previous day, Connor couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Connor snapped around, thinking he saw a shadowy figure watching him behind a nearby house, but as he looked closer, he saw no one there. A cold whisper tickled his ears from behind as he stammered around, not seeing where it came from. Remembering the harrowing whispers in the forest, Connor resolved himself to just go home, but as he walked more and more, he would see the shadow watching. Sometimes it would appear from within a window, other times from behind a tree or building. Connor rushed inside and went to bed, closing his eyes shut, hoping for it all to be a bad dream. He tried to sleep, but as gently as a memory, the voice would echo his name once more, keeping him awake. After a sleepless night, Connor set off the next morning to the local cleric to find out what was wrong with him. He tried to explain his case, but the cleric dismissed his circumstance as the mad ramblings of the village nitwit. He went to the library next, but was faced with similar treatment. It didn't help that the shadow watched from the window with a face like his own, whispering to him that there would be no help. Connor resigned himself to ignoring what he saw. With his reputation, he knew rambling about voices would only lead to trouble. It wasn't long after that before 3 players arrived in the village. Connor initially got excited, before questioning himself why. The players destroyed villagers' homes and ransacked chests. Connor was aghast, and yet nobody else seemed to mind. The other villagers seemed excited to trade with the players. What was wrong with everyone, he thought? Surprisingly, one of the players approached him. Hey, you got anything to trade?
Yo, Andrew, don't bother. You can't trade with a village nitwit.
The others laughed as this player, Andrew, claimed he was just joking and already knew that. The Shadow's voice once again whispered to Connor. It grumbled about the nerve of the players to come to his town and mock him. Without realizing, Connor had uncrossed his arms. In a fit of fury, Connor ran up and swung at the player, knocking him a fair distance back. The others were stunned at the sight they had never seen before. Some jeered at Andrew for getting beat up by a villager. The man himself, however, was furious. He drew his sword and lashed back at Connor. Unarmored, Connor was badly injured, but the village's iron golem came to his defense. Not wanting to deal with a tougher foe, the players retreated from the village, but not before swearing to get revenge. Connor stood in disbelief at what had transpired, his fellow villagers surrounding him. Shouts of disapproval and disgust started to pour out from the angry crowd. They called him an oathbreaker, but how could they be angry at him? It was the players who were acting like monsters. His words fell on deaf ears, however, and the heartbroken Connor was banished from the village. As he departed, he looked back one last time at his home, but only saw his shadow watching. No longer within the safety of his village, Connor had to fend for himself while wandering across the vast landscapes. His hardships were only intensified by the continuous voices and shadows plaguing his mind. With uncrossed arms, Connor had the freedom to craft and fight back, but his limited knowledge kept him from having an easy time. At sunset, Connor built a small campfire to warm himself and hopefully keep the monsters at bay. Once again, he saw the shadow staring. Tired of this gimmick, he shouted out at it.
Why? Why do you haunt me? What even are you?
The shadow approached, and, with a voice like some twisted version of his own, it claimed that it was a friend. He just wanted to help Connor against the unfairness of the world. It found the way the other villagers and players treated him unforgivable. Connor was cautious at first, but slowly started to agree with what the shadow said.
I can give you the power to end all the bad things. You just have to trust me.
Hesitant, Connor thought long and hard about the offer, but by the time he was ready to respond, the shadow had disappeared like a phantom. Without even a moment of respite, monsters encroached on the now isolated villager. Connor pulled out his wooden sword and fought his way through the woods. The long night ended, and Connor stood victorious at the forest's edge. In the morning light, Connor beheld a new village, one he had never seen before. However eager, he was grasped by hesitation. While deciding whether or not to enter the village, a chill ran down Connor's spine as a shadow suddenly loomed over him. Behind him was none other than the blood golem. Connor stood in shock at the red giant staring maliciously down at him. With a quaking sensation in his bones, Connor was forcefully teleported into a bedrock prison. Inside, the golem stood threateningly across from him. It demanded to know what Connor was. The blood golem was a being of power who could glimpse into the very code of Minecraft, and he knew there was something off about Connor.
I'm just a normal villager. You have to believe me.
Connor, in desperation, regaled the red giant of his plight in the forest and his interaction with the players that led to his banishment from his home. The blood golem felt sympathy for Connor. It too hated players and their malevolent acts. The blood golem told Connor that in his code lies abilities locked away, but warned him that there was something more sinister attached as well. Ending their conversation, the blood golem encouraged Connor to fight back against the players before teleporting him to a random location. As Connor trekked foreign lands, he stumbled upon another village. This place, however, gave off an uncanny feeling. No villagers walked the streets of this ghost town. The humble abodes were broken into, and the chests and beds had been looted. As Connor wandered the vacant streets, he came upon a strange structure in the middle of the town. Inside, there were multiple beds and chests full of treasure that Connor had never seen before. Connor ascertained that this must be a player base, albeit a little less grandiose than what the rumors led him to believe. After coming to that conclusion, Connor could only make presumptions about the unfortunate fate of the villagers who once resided here. Connor flew into a rage, darting around and wrecking parts of the base. As he grew more furious, the shadow once again returned and whispered over his shoulder.
Set a trap. turn the tables on them.
Blinded by his outrage, Connor gave in to the will of this malicious entity. He hastily left to start his preparations, leaving his dark doppelganger to linger. Hours later, the players returned to the village. They were taken aback at what they saw. The village appeared drastically different than when they had departed. The grass paths were replaced with gravel roads, and houses were now simple cubes of cobblestone with wooden roofs. They were bewildered at the drastic changes. As far as they understood, they were the only players on this server. Not far into the village itself was a signpost taunting the players with a cryptic warning to leave. At first, the players wanted to dismiss this as a joke, but soon they started to hear voices. They readied their weapons and surveyed their surroundings, but they could not find a trace of anything or anyone. Agitated, the players ran into their base, only to find that the inside had been ransacked. Their chests had all been emptied of their valuables, and blood covered the floor. However, the unnerving detail that captured the most attention was the ominous hole in the ground leading straight down, deep below.
I don't like this. Maybe we should just leave.
Leave? Are you kidding? They stole our stuff! The players debated their next course of action. Some of the more casual players wanted to just leave and forsake this cursed place. The most strong-willed of the group, Andrew, convinced the others to follow his lead. Andrew was determined to hunt down the ones who stole their belongings and exact revenge. They each prepared buckets of water and in succession plunged into the deep pit. With the sloshing sound of liquid, the players landed unharmed at the bottom of the pit, using their buckets of water to survive the perilous fall. They found themselves in a mine shaft similar to the ones they had explored prior. Yet, just like in the village, unsettling differences from a normal mine shaft were readily apparent. The halls were enveloped in a crimson light from redstone torches. Blood splatter adorned the walls and floors, and more cryptic writings were left foretelling the players' demise. Not discouraged, the players pushed onwards, fighting off the mobs populating the mine shaft. After one scuffle, a separated player tried to return to the group when they stepped on a hidden pressure plate. Instantly, they were assailed with a hail of arrows. The other players looked on in shock as their friend instantaneously died. As the players continued on, they encountered more frequent traps, including pitfalls and TNT chests. Enjoying the suffering, Connor observed from the shadows, outfitted with the armor he had stolen. His plan was working, but it wasn't enough. The players had already started to disassemble his traps as they explored the maze. The shadows spurred Connor to take action.
What can I do? They're too strong.
You are no longer the village network I found in that forest. Use your anger to fight them.
Emboldened by its words, Connor initiated his attack. With unnatural swiftness, he sprinted through the winding tunnels, making run-by attacks on the players. At first, the players didn't know what was happening, but they soon adjusted to his hit-and-run tactics. Formulating a plan, Andrew quickly set himself up in a dead-end passageway. "Hey freak, you think you're so tough, huh? Come get me!" Connor's attention was grabbed by the player that had lashed out at him before. He could not resist launching an attack. He ran in at dizzying speeds and struck Andrew with a heavy blow. Unfortunately, this did not end the bothersome player. Before Connor could retreat, he was blocked off by the other players who had been lying in wait. They rained blows down upon him. Connor's armor quickly broke and he fell to the ground, bloody and beaten. After a while, he finally died under their assault. Satisfied that they had won, the players departed from the mine shaft. Only a shadow remained lingering over Connor's final resting place.
It's finally time. Death is just the beginning.
Clambering out of the pit, the players glanced around, ready to be greeted by their defeated comrades. Despite expectations, they met with no one up top. They were sure their friend should have respawned by now. Still in a good mood from their victory, they shrugged it off. The players went outside to start removing the strange houses, laughing and joking as they did. Without warning, the figure of Connor appeared in their midst. His skin was still covered in blood from the beating earlier. His eyes were now pits of darkness. "That's impossible! We killed you!" A lifeless stare was the only reply. With his death, he had now fully transformed into the Blood Villager. Before the players could recover from their initial shock, the Blood Villager lashed out, sending all of the players back with a sudden force. Stumbling to the ready, the players drew their weapons only to find that the Blood Villager was nowhere to be seen. They looked around fervently, shouting out to each other, hoping someone would spot him. A shrill, incoherent roar echoed out, and suddenly players started to vanish left and right. Andrew watched in disbelief as notifications that all of his friends had left the game appeared. No one who had died or left the game had come back, and Andrew was determined not to meet the same fate. He ran away as fast as he could, but the Blood Villager, with unmatched speed, swiftly blocked his path. Andrew swung his sword vigorously at the monstrosity that faced him, but to no avail. The sound of cracking wood alerted him to the awful sight of blood flowing out from all the houses. Powerless in this new hellish place, Andrew could only yell out at the abomination he confronted.
What is this? What are you doing to my game?
A soulless stare was his only response.